time to wrap up everything that I read in February. Before I get into everything that I read or did this month, I want to mention like my wrap-up format. Lately I feel like a lot of other channels have shifted towards the different types of wrap-ups, or some of the elements that I've always done in my wrap-ups are now being done by other channels, and so this has kind of had me struggling with feeling outdated or obsolete and like, what am I doing? But this is the format that works for me and the format that I like, and this is me. So I want to continue doing monthly wrap-ups, and I want to continue doing the things that I enjoy about wrap-ups. So my content is not changing. If you guys don't like the monthly wrap-ups, I'm sorry, you don't have to watch them, but this is the format and the style that works for me, and I'm going to continue doing what I do. So, alright. I do want to mention a few other channels and people that I got to hang out with and meet this month. So first of all, I went to a book signing for Victoria Schwab. It was her launch party for her book A Gathering of Shadows. At this event, I actually got to meet up with a few booktubers that are in my area. Megan from the channel Megan Precourt, Jenna from the channel Jenna Clare K, and her friend Emily, who I don't think is currently active in booktube, but it was really great to meet up with those three girls and just chat. This month I also took part in another Bookish event, and that was, I was on episode 2 of Book Battles, which is a book trivia game show, which is a lot like Jeopardy, and it's hosted by McKaylee over at Kel's Corner. The other contestants that were on my episode were Elizabeth from Elizabeth Book Babble and Hope from Hope Ortigo, and it was just a lot of fun to get to chat with them live and compete and fail miserably at the quotes category. So if you didn't get to see the live show, I'll put a link to it down below. I had a great time this month at those two events, and all of the channels that I've mentioned are going to be linked down below, and I sincerely hope that you check them out because they're all incredible booktubers. Let's get into the books that I read this month, and let's start this thing out like always with checking in with my monthly TBR. So as you noticed, I did not read the two books that were my TBR jar picks for the month. I did not even touch Miss Mayhem, and I'm only about 100 pages into The Darkest Minds, and I am enjoying it. I just ran out of time this month. For the books that I read this month, my ratings did range from 2 stars to 5 stars, and I actually had several 5-star books this month, and all for extremely different reasons. They're all very different genres, but as always, I'm going to start at the lower end of my rating scale and work my way up to my favorite book of the month. So my least favorite book that I read this month was The Love That Split the World by Emily Henry, and this is a 2016 YA debut novel, and the premise is about a girl who's just graduated from high school, and she is so ready to leave her small town, and all of a sudden she starts seeing people that shouldn't be there, and one of these apparitions tells her that she has 3 months to save him, but doesn't say who he is. And the book blurb on Goodreads compares this book to Friday Night Lights meets The Time Traveler's Wife, and while that is an apt comparison, I personally just found like a lot was lacking in this book. I felt like this book didn't know if it was going to go the full time travel route or if this was more of a contemporary. And I really feel like you will be more satisfied with this book if you pick it up looking for a solid contemporary novel about growing up and leaving home and leaving behind the friends that you've grown up with your whole life. There were a lot of really good traits about this book, but it just didn't work for me because I was expecting more of an action-packed time travel story, so I ended up giving this book only a 2-star rating. It felt like it was trying to tackle too many serious topics, and it couldn't really focus on one of them, and therefore it took away from all of them. So it didn't work for me, but I do have a full video review up that does explain reasons why you might like it a lot more than I did, and I do go into more depth about the reasons why I didn't like it. Next up, at 3.5 stars, I read Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy by Cassandra Clare, Robin Wasserman, Maureen Johnson, and Sarah Rees Brennan. This is a bind-up of 10 novellas that are set in the Mortal Instruments or the Shadowhunters universe, and these stories each take place after the end of the Mortal Instruments series. So don't read them until you're finished with all the books that are currently out. I read the individual novellas. Those are all currently out and available in ebook format and also audiobook format. I did listen to the audiobooks. These novellas do fill in a lot of information about what has happened since the Mortal Instruments series, building up to Lady Midnight, which comes out in March. I did appreciate kind of the refresher, but I really didn't think that most of the novellas had much of an impact or really added much, and that's generally how I feel about all novellas. But there are some really important details that occur in these novellas. For instance, someone that we previously know has had a child, and somebody that we previously know and people that we are going to know become parabatai. The two that I would definitely say you gotta read these two, they have the best, most important information, are The Fiery Trial and Born to Endless Night. I think that those have some very important information in them that you may care about before going into Lady Midnight. Next up, I started the Heroes of Olympus series by Riordan this month, and I read the first two books in that series, The Lost Hero and The Son of Neptune, and I gave both of these books 4 stars. This series takes place after the Percy Jackson and the Olympian series, and we basically are starting a whole new prophecy and quest that kicks off, and it does involve some characters that we know from the first Percy Jackson series, although the characters in these books are a bit older, and also Riordan has incorporated Roman mythology and talks about how the Greek and Roman gods and mythology mix together. I listened to both of these on audiobook, and the audiobook narrator for this series is Joshua Swanson, and I am currently listening to the 3rd book, so I feel like I'm going to speed through this series pretty quickly, so I'm going to wait and elaborate on my full thoughts in a full series review. But really quickly, I have been enjoying this series so much more than I enjoyed the first Percy Jackson books. Next up is another 4-star read for the month, and that is Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in a new duology that is set in her same world as her Grisha trilogy. You can still read this book even if you haven't read the original Grisha trilogy. This is a story of 6 different, basically, social outcasts. There are a lot of prejudices in this world, and so we see these different characters from different backgrounds have to work together because there is a heist involved in this book. I buddy read this with a few people, with Kirsty, Martinez, Mike, Wendy, and Samantha, and I'll put links to all of their channels down below, and maybe they will be discussing it too in case you want a different take than just mine. But in my opinion, this book took way too long to kind of build up to that heist story, because you learn about the heist in chapter 3 and then it doesn't actually start going into motion until chapter 21. So the first half of this book was an abundance of character backstories, and it did really pay off in the end once they get into the heist and all their lives are in danger and you're like, no, I'm attached to my precious babies and nothing bad can happen to them. So that's a good thing, except I just didn't like how chopped up those backstories were, because you get one character's part of their backstory, and then 5 chapters later you go back to their backstory and get some other section of it. It just kind of kept taking me out of the action and the pacing. I thought that it was perhaps too much build up for a series that's only going to be 2 books long, and maybe we could have gotten into the heist and then cut back into some of the backstory, because I didn't even know these characters to care about where they had come from yet. So that is the problem that I had with the story. However, I did almost a 180 once the heist picked up, because I loved it. It was just exactly what I wanted in a heist story. There were high stakes, double crossing, things went wrong and then things went right. A lot of the planning of the heist was kept from the reader until after it was happening, so that did really keep me on the edge of my seat. The next book I read this month was Stars Above by Marissa Meyer, which is a kind of finale companion to the Lunar Chronicles series. There are 9 novellas within this book that take place throughout the course of this entire series, and I've read 4 of them before because they were originally published online on Marissa Meyer's blog, but I reread them in this book because I love them. These are some of my favorite novellas ever. Like I said before, I'm not a big fan of novellas, but these add a lot to the series, and it was also really great to have an extra epilogue that takes place after the end of winter. I highly, highly recommend this to anyone who is a fan of the Lunar Chronicles. I actually have a suggested reading order for this series. I might make another video on that because I really, really disagree with the order in which the stories are numbered on Goodreads. They're not chronological at all. If you guys would like to know what my suggested reading order is, please let me know that. Next up, I read Reign of Shadows by Sophie Jordan, which is a first book in a new duology. This is a fantasy world that is perpetually in darkness. There's no sunshine. There are also these creatures that come out of the ground and basically eat you if they catch you out about during the night. The king and queen of this kingdom were murdered. Their only heir was taken away from the palace, and she's been hidden away all of her life in this secure power. Now she is 17 years old and she's tired of living her life in hiding and she wants to know what else is out there in this world. I do think Sophie Jordan has said that it is a Rapunzel retelling or can work as one, and I definitely picked up on some parallels to Rapunzel in the first part of the book. I did receive an ARC copy of this book in a giveaway, and this is what I read and reviewed, and having the ARC did not influence my opinion. I knew that I wanted to read this book. I've liked other things by Sophie Jordan in the past. I just checked out this library copy to see what the changes were. I thought maybe there would be a map in it, but there's not. I did absolutely love this book. It's a non-magical fantasy world, which really felt more like a post-apocalyptic type world to me. And another really great thing about this book that I want to point out is that the protagonist is blind, and that's something that is not represented very often. Just great book, and I do have a full video review up if you want to hear more of my thoughts on that. I will link that right up here. Next, I listened to the audiobook of Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson, and the author herself narrated this audiobook, and Jenny Lawson has a blog called The Bloggess. This is a non-fiction memoir in which Jenny is really transparent about her mental illness, and she's also really hilarious in telling some of these really bizarre things that have happened to her before. I really feel like this book will either be relatable or insightful for you, whether or not you have a mental illness, but I think that a lot of people will get a lot of good stuff out of it. I feel like I could listen to this book on repeat over and over, and some of the lines that she said will still be as powerful to me as they were the first time I heard them, because to me it was just very helpful with feeling like I'm not alone or feeling like I can work through this. And finally, my favorite book that I read this month was The Siren by Kiera Cass. The premise of this book is that our main character, Kaylin, has grown up in the early 1900s, and when her and her family were on a cruise ship, the cruise ship sank, and she was pulled from the ocean and offered an opportunity to serve as a siren. She could either drown now, or she could serve 100 years as a siren, singing people to their deaths, and at the end of her 100-year term, she would be set free to live her life. And she chooses to do that and become a siren. There are only a couple of rules to being a siren, and the first one is you can't fall in love with a human because there's no way for that to end well. And of course, about 80 years into her term of being a siren, Kaylin meets a boy and she starts forming feelings for him, which causes all kinds of chaos between Kaylin and her sisters and the ocean whom they serve. And yes, there is a romance here. That summary and the whole book is really driven by this underlying theme of falling in love with a human and what all that means for her. But the love interest is actually only in about a quarter of this book in total. They don't spend a lot of time together in the story. And although I thought it was a really wonderful romance, what I loved about this book so much were the other types of love portrayed. This was one of the best portrayals of friendship that I've read in books between Kaylin and her siren sisters. And another type of love that was explored in this book, which I don't think I have ever read a book about that captured it in the way that this one did, is parental love, because the ocean is an actual personified being in this book. It's kind of like their deity. She created these sirens and they serve her, and so throughout the story of Kaylin falling in love with a human, we also get to see the oceans struggle with that, because she's a parent basically. This is her daughter who now wants to leave home. I've seen so many mixed reviews on this book, but for me this was so much more than a romance, and it just really touched me and I was not expecting it. This is absolutely nothing like the selection. The writing tone is totally different, so I would definitely say don't judge this book based on however you felt about the selection, because it's a completely different body of work. I am currently working on a video of 5 reasons why you should read The Siren, so keep an eye out for that one. It should be up soon. And that is it for this wrap up. Very long. So that's what I read in February and my reviews of them. If you've read any of these, let me know your thoughts down below, and let me know what your favorite read in February was. If you have any questions about these books that I did not mention in my reviews, don't hesitate to ask me down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the comments. Bye!